there is no old curse, there's no haunted doll, or all of those things are not there.
Because if it is just horror, you can't spook people after a point. It has to be through characters. No, you have to be engaged with the character enough to go on their journey and to feel horror.
The character was someone who, the way I did it is like he's choking the air of Delhi, the pollution, the toxicity.
उस बड़ी सिटी का आपके अंदर तो एक इनर कॉन्फ्लिक्ट चल ही रहा है, उस सिटी का भी एक अपने में एक हॉरर होता है, आई थिंक.
Khauf is basically for me about what was my karmabhumi in Delhi when I stepped out of college and I lived in a working women's hostel. You can't take romance out of young women's lives, and there is this contrast between what is stalking them and how romanticized stalking is.
Guys, welcome to Indian Express. So I have to start by saying that I watched a little bit of the show, and
How much is little?
3 episodes.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's more than she has watched.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. But I have to be very careful to not disclose spoilers. So yeah. But I want to start by asking you that this is not the first horror show or title you've done. We've seen you in Pari.
Right.
Yeah, but I think the first time you creeped all of us out was at Monsoon Wedding.
Right.
With your character. So, what do you do to get into the skin of these not very
Horrifying
likable, horrifying people, and still make them so memorable?
I don't do anything because I think the most of the work is done by the script, and it's a wrong conception that you have to add on to that. You try and play it as truthful to the script as you can. And in this case, the writing is exceptional. And when the writing is so good, then really it makes everyone's work quite easy.
But so you play a hakim or a doctor in the show, but is there something you did to your voice because it sounded very different?
Yeah, Smita? Yeah? Yeah, it's a slight difference. There's a little more bass. Because also he's speaking slow. That's already a difference, But really, Devansh, I don't think about these things and then arrive at it. You do something and with the help of everybody in the team, including makeup and costumes, and you arrive at that point.
Yeah. So what kind of a discussion you had with him just to get him into that character? Were there any influences that you discussed?
So his character, he's someone that we don't know much about him. He's a mystery. And he stands in for something really ancient. He stands in for a kind of power that is seeping out of the world. He stands for something malevolent. The way he breathes, he's centered in old Delhi. He's centered in we've kept him in this mansion, in this haveli, which looks timeless, So also because it is an urban landscape that we are talking about, and there is this contrast of the urban landscape with the ancient, we kind of felt that, the character was someone who, the way I did it is like he's choking the air of Delhi, the pollution, the toxicity, all of that. We wanted him to breathe in a certain way, to see that there is power seeping out of him, and he's still there is this last dying gasp of something toxic that is there in the air and that is trying to survive. So that was behind the way he was breathing and the way he looks.
Interesting. But in the show, her character's boyfriend, I think, tells her that you should get out of the hotel or the hostel room because it's not safe. And she says that, but where is a safe place for women? Or kahan hai safe jagah shehar mein? So how do you think of incorporating those social horrors, daily atrocities into a horror show?
So I'm very happy that you've seen that Khauf is centered in a very particular specific social context. We are looking at how women negotiate with space in these chaotic urban spaces, right? So where this horror is situated is not just in Madhu's head. I mean, that certainly is there, but we are also looking at this constant low grade fear that women have to deal with when they step out in these urban spaces, you know. So when she's talking about this, she's a young girl, she stepped into this gig economy, she's left Gwalior, she could be from Gwalior, Balia, Bhopal. Khauf is basically for me about what was my karm bhumi in Delhi when I stepped out of college and I lived in a working women's hostel where you have a number of these women who've come from all over the country. So I was interested in what drove them out of their safe zone into this really harsh environment and what drives them back. And then there are those who stick their guns and who stay there and make something of themselves. So those are the qualities with which Madhu's character was created, and that is like you put her through the ringer to arrive at that. You know that if it's not safe outside, and how it beats you down, how the fear and Khauf is about that. So that was a very important, interesting thing that the character starts with, at least.
Yeah. Monica, you play a character who kind of moves to a big city to escape her past, but clearly the past doesn't escape her. But did you relate with her, with a girl that who moves to a big city, and but is very ambitious, but is somehow held back by horrors, maybe that are in her mind or that are very much the reality?
I think I absolutely connect with her because I also come from like a small town, and I know how conscious you are when you make your first move to a big city. And I completely relate with her. She's not that courageous enough. She is bit underconfident. And you know, जब आप किसी भी बड़े शहर में जाते हो तो छोटी छोटी चीज़ें आपका जो बिहेवियर होता है मैटर करता है. आप सबके साथ जेलन होना चाहते हो, so you only make the first move of meeting people or saying them hello, hi. You know, you want to kind of mold yourself. सो हाँ, आई थिंक सब लोगों ने ये सब चीज़ें फेस किया है जब आप एक बड़ी सिटीज़ में जाते हो, और एक उस बड़ी सिटी का आपके अंदर तो एक इनर कॉन्फ्लिक्ट चल ही रहा है, उस सिटी का भी एक अपने में एक हॉरर होता है, आई थिंक. सो यस, आई थिंक वी ऑल हैव फेस्ड दैट थिंग.
Yeah, and there are such like there are a variety of horror elements, small and big, peppered across the show. Like we see just a normal sealant can do something so fatal, or even the cat named Rakshas in the in the show, which are such nice touches. So when you write, how do you incorporate these elements, which may not add a lot, but they kind of build the mood?
Other than the Billy name, I can tell you. The Billy name is, I didn't want to add anything cutesy in the show, you know, that doesn't belong to it. But the horror in the show is coming from realism. It is very important for us that this fear that lives with us psychologically becomes something tangible and terrifying in reality. So we did not want to, it is a contemporary grounded show. We are using horror in very contemporary settings. We are using horror in unsettling ways on roads, in rooms, in our heads, in situations that we all face. So there is no old curse, there's no haunted doll, or you know, all of those things are not there. This is something which becomes tangible because someone feels, someone experiences. There is paranoia because women have felt that way, they've experienced something, you know. So when you're trying to construct that world, and also because it's a lived experience, it's very personal for me. When we were building the set for, like you said, the ceiling, and thank you so much for noticing that, because a chill ran down my spine when I entered that room, you know. Nitin Zihani, our amazing production designer, what he had done is that he had taken in everything that was in the script, and even more than that, you know, where you have this poster of a superstar, where you have a very sparse, you know, a trunk, a closet, the room, the marks on it, the open wiring, the very narrow passages, all of that was constructed to keep horror very tangible and real in the spaces, so that it looks systemic, that horror, it's not just, you know, about a booth or something, but it's about the way women live, you know, it's about the way those people are living in that hostel. So the hostel itself speaks. So in that construction, in the locations that we chose, and the arcs that we gave most of our characters, we tried to do it in the spatial as well as the emotional way, you know, rooting.
But the
So
superstar.
can I just interrupt and say, you know, I'm sure we'll be doing this throughout the day, and we'll be talking about this as a horror show. But just to see it just like that is also a mistake, I think, because eventually it's a story about people, about characters, and how, and to write a 8 episode, where the relationships are so complex, I think that is the real victory of writing. Besides, of course, what she's achieved with the horror genre. Because if it is just horror, you can't spook people after a point. It has to be through characters. No, you have to be engaged with the character enough to go on their journey and to feel horror.
Yeah.
And then we go with her journey completely, and then other residents of the hostel also.
But don't you think it's a far cry from the horror films of, say, 90s, 2000s?
And that's a good thing.
80s. As a
80s.
child,
Yeah.
Ramsey Brothers, listen, they
Right.
were my favorite. Huh? So,
But how come the superstar image made it to your room? Because that's also cutesy, no?
no, I mean Shah Rukh Khan. These are Shah Rukh Khan's images everywhere. The thing is that even though it's bleak, you can't take romance out of young women's lives, and there is this contrast between what is stalking them and how romanticized stalking is. So we wanted to put that there is hope, there is romance, there is desire in that room, but it's turned darker. So there is one in which there is a very corny picture of him, and then there's the other in which he's turned really a contrast. It is just a shape of someone with open arms, but it's the idea was to kind of, when you go to that bed, to that wall, it doesn't seem all that romantic and nice. It takes another tone. I hope people are noticing all these things that we have written and put over there, but that was the idea.
So Rajat, I feel like you contributed to major, movements in Hindi cinema. First, I think you introduced kind of the multiplex film. Obviously, a lot of them were doing it, but with Major Fry. So now, do you think that is OTT the new multiplex? People are not going to multiplexes.
That's what we thought 5 years back, but it may not be the same today. But these things are always fluid. Hopefully, it'll change again after a couple of years. But right now, it's not very pleasant, I think, for independent filmmakers.
Yeah, and the other thing is that crowdfunding. I mean, you crowdfunded so many of your projects, including your directorials.
Right.
Now, with streamers today, with independent films, is it a tad bit easier to?
No, unfortunately, not. Unfortunately, that's what I'm saying. We would imagine that it would be easier,
Yeah.
but it's not. Having said that, people who are really driven are still doing what they want to do, and they'll find means and ways to do it. If not this, then something else.
So finally, I want to ask, because we're talking about Khauf, is there a professional fear that you haven't really confronted yet, but want to? Like any of you, all of you.
Professional fear. Go.
Professional fear. I think I don't want to connect with like a bad writers or something because that's really, I mean, that's a very, you're in a very bad situation because when you get like a good script and everything, I think 50% of the actor's work is done. It's done, almost done. So I think, yeah, I want to avoid bad writers.
Anything for you?
No, I don't think there's any fear professionally. It's whatever opportunity one gets to, it's always a joy. To be on the set is a joy. So even a bad set.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to the rest of the episodes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Devansh.